Good morning, everyone. I'm glad you enjoyed the evening yesterday. It's very nice to see some familiar faces and some new ones. I'm very pleased to give again the welcome to this instant award to Gifo from Japan, to Cali from Colombia. Very nice to have you here, the capital of salsa, and of course to Ireland. Very nice to have you, and welcome to this network of observatories. As you can see, our family is growing, which is, I think, is a good sign. We must be doing something right if the family is growing. I'm very pleased to address the topic of net positive approach for tourism, which basically means nature positive approach for tourism. Next slide, please. Lorna. Basically, we are speaking about the significance, the importance of nature and biodiversity for tourism. We all know how important biodiversity is for tourism. It's vital. Coasts, mountains, forests are main attractions for our tourism sector, and biodiversity itself is a direct attraction, which is at the heart of many nature-based tourism products. We're talking about wildlife watching, we're talking about tourism in protected areas, etc. Many, many activities. And on the other hand, we are all fully aware that there is this relationship, very deep connection between nature and tourism. And this also, I think, gives a specific responsibility for our sector towards the planet. We have this connection with nature, so we have the responsibility to manage this sustainably and responsibly, so that we use this unique ability that our sector has to conserve, to act and to promote environmental conservation and protection of biodiversity. Next, please. The Secretariat, UNWTO, has been working for many years now promoting action on biodiversity and tourism. We work with another secretariat, the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Many years now, we have even a memorandum of understanding, which means that we work with them in many of the documents and many of the tools, the guidelines, the manuals they have published, starting with the first one on the left of my screen in 2004. There have been a few guidance manuals on how to use all these materials, to which our Secretariat has contributed to. And we go through publications that our organization has prepared itself. One of the main ones is the one we did in 2010 within the context of the International Year of Biodiversity and for the COP, which is the Conference of the Parties of the CBD Convention. This was the first approach, the first analysis we did about the importance of biodiversity for the sector, the value of biodiversity for the sector, and the action and the role that the tourism sector can play for protecting biodiversity. From then, there were a series of other manuals and publications, but one of the breakthrough regarding our work with the CBD was in 2016, what is known as a Mexican declaration, the Cancun Declaration on Mainstreaming Biodiversity for Well-being. This declaration for first time acknowledged the role of tourism as an agent of change, an agent of positive change. So this has been a very important breakthrough, this recognition in with the work that we do with the CBD Convention. Next, please. But as you all know, we also are a UN agency which has the mandate to mainstream tourism across the system. As such, we work, one of the main networks in which we actively participate for many years now is the Environment Management Group, which has a specific issue on biodiversity. Basically, we are there to represent the sector and to make sure that the needs and concerns of the sector are reflected there. One of the latest publications we supported was the one you see on the screen, supporting the global biodiversity agenda, which basically is the commitment of the whole system to support member states, our member states, in implementing the global biodiversity framework. Next, please. So in preparation for the COP15, the UN Biodiversity Summit that took place in Montreal, Canada last year, in which we had the opportunity to participate with our executive director, Sofia, and with Dirk, we worked on a report on the integration of biodiversity in national tourism policies. Basically, what we wanted to find is how, where, and why was biodiversity referenced in national tourism policies. And if they were referenced, to understand if they prioritize in the national tourism policies the conservation and the sustainable use of biodiversity. basically, the main objective with this paper is that we wanted to strengthen this relationship that we think is mutually beneficial for biodiversity and for tourism. And for our research, we use 80 national tourism policies from member states that, of course, includes Austria, includes Portugal, includes Germany, includes Colombia, Guatemala. Many of our member states are included in this study. Next, please. Some of the findings are very interesting and I would like to share with you today. And in order to arrive to this, we, of course, did a methodology, a very well-established methodology in which we established values that will allow us for a comparative analysis, not only across a region, but also across countries, and that will give us a perspective, an international perspective of how biodiversity was being included in national tourism policies. One of the main findings was, for instance, that 65% of the 80 policies reference the tourism or the term biodiversity or biological diversity at least once. That shows that most of the tourism policies acknowledge the existence of biodiversity and somehow the relevance of biodiversity in national tourism policies. The second was the 51 reference the term biodiversity or biological diversity, because many people use biological diversity because of the name of the convention, and they consider biodiversity as a visitor attraction. And that also gives us the indication that, of course, they don't not only see this, as an economic benefit, but tourism itself, or biodiversity itself, is a specific biodiversity attraction for the destination. We also wanted to see whether they saw biodiversity or the role of tourism on biodiversity as a positive or as a negative, was a positive force or not. And we found that 34% reference tourism as a positive force in biodiversity conservation. So if they think this is positive, then give us the understanding that they don't only see tourism as an economic sector that is important in itself, but it can also serve as a path, as a venue that will help protect biodiversity. And before I forget, in the 51, the reference biodiversity as a tourist attraction or a visitor attraction, it was one thing that was important is we noticed that there was no correlation between how big the tourism sector was for the member state or for the destination, whether the tourism sector was a main component of the economy or was small, didn't have a correlation with whether they introduced biodiversity into national tourism policies or not. And if 34% consider about tourism as a positive force in biodiversity conservation, there is also the other side. There is 21% which thinks that biodiversity is an area of potential impact from tourism, which also means that it gives, if we know that there is a potential negative impact, then there is risks, then they give us the possibility to be able to do something about it. Next, please. And another important thing why we also went to the COP, to this biodiversity summit in Montreal, was because at this big event, and there was a big global biodiversity framework that was supposed to be approved, and it was approved. This is a historical framework that is going to guide the development of biodiversity for the future. But basically, it's a call for action. Same as we have a call for action on climate change, this is a call for action to be able to protect and restore biodiversity by 2030. So it's the path that establishes how we are going to work on that globally and what it means for our sector. You will say, there are many frameworks out there, but why is this important? Because this global, because the first part of the summit took place in China and the second part took place in Montreal, that's why it's the name. This global biodiversity framework has 23 global actionable targets. And from these 23, there are 3 specific that are very important for our sector. And those are obligations that our member states need to fulfill. The first one is target 14 on mainstreaming, that we have to ensure that this is fully integrated into operation and decision-making. And this mainstreaming is across all levels of governments and across all economic sectors. The second one is assessing and reducing impacts, because what we want to, of course, we aim is at reducing the negative impacts of biodiversity and increase the nature positive impact. And how do we do the assessing and the reducing impacts? We do this through monitoring and through measuring. So that's why it's important, all the work that we are developing. And the third one is target 16, which is promoting a sustainable use, which is basically trying to reduce, among others, food waste, for instance. This is one of the objectives that we are trying. So we need to enable, we need to facilitate awareness raising and promote sustainable consumption choices. Of course, water and of course food waste, we need to reduce this by half. So those are some of the big tasks that our sector has, and to which, of course, we need to advance, and we are advancing in that direction. Next, please. Here is the nice photo with for the launching, because at the COP15, another big undertaking, a historic, I think, partnership that was launched was also the Nature Positive Partnership, and that is launched between our organization, the WTTC, the World Travel and Tourism Council, and the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. And this is a big commitment that our sector is expressing publicly, that we want our sector to contribute effectively to reverse biodiversity loss. We want, basically what we want is that by 2030, we have more biodiversity than we have now. And by 2050, apart from that, we have restored biodiversity. So our sector has a critical role to play. And we want a sector, as I indicated there, where we don't only have nature positive action, basically we protect, but we also restore and regenerate. And this also will help, of course, support also. The idea of this partnership is also support member states, support destination, because this is going to be implemented at all levels. This coming Montreal global biodiversity framework, and the indicators or the targets that I just mentioned to you. So this is a big undertaking. I think last reflection I want to make is, we all know that for a sector like ours, which really impacts directly the environment in which it develops, should have sustainability at its core. It should guide everything. The entire value chain should be guided by this. And since we depend on nature, we depend on biodiversity, then we have to take advantage of this possibility that we have, of this a specific role that we have to become some sort of guardian of nature. And I think we are advancing on that part of this alliance. We have already started the work. There are many case studies, initiatives that show how the sector is committed to advance. And I think together we can do a great thing and become really guardians of nature. Thank you very much. Thank you.